I came back after 10 years. The bus dropped me off at the edge of town just after dawn. The air smelled like wet asphalt and cut grass. I had one duffel bag, a phone with 3 contacts, and a bank account with enough money to last me 2 months if I was careful. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I walked the 4 miles into town because I wanted to see what had changed. Not much, it turned out. Same hardware store, same diner with the cracked neon sign, same church with the white steeple that needed paint 10 years ago and still needed it now. I used to know this place, used to know every street, every face, every story. I worked logistics for a regional freight company back then. Long hauls, supply chain management, the kind of work that teaches you how to plan 3 steps ahead and never leave a loose end. Then I left. It wasn't dramatic. No fight, no scandal. My son was 22, fresh out of college, full of ideas about what the family should look like. His fiancée had opinions too, loud ones. They sat me down one evening and explained that I was holding everyone back, that my mother would be better off in their care, that I should take some time to figure myself out. I was tired. I said yes. I signed papers, power of attorney, guardianship transfer for my mother, who was 76 and starting to forget things. They promised they'd take care of her. They promised they'd keep me updated. I believed them. I spent 10 years moving through the country, warehouse jobs, dispatch gigs, things that kept me busy and didn't ask questions. I sent emails. I called. The responses got shorter, then stopped. I told myself they were busy. I told myself I'd come back when things settled. Then last month I called the house, and a stranger answered, said the number had been transferred, said they didn't know anyone by my name. That's when I bought the bus ticket. I reached the old neighborhood just after 8 in the morning. The houses looked the same. The trees were bigger. I turned onto Maple Street and saw my mother's house at the end of the block. There was a sign in the front yard, a big one, the kind they use for estate sales, black text on whiteboard. It had my name on it. In loving memory. I stopped walking. The sign was professionally made. Clean fonts, a border of roses. Below my name were the dates, birth year correct. I stood there on the sidewalk, staring at my own memorial. A car drove past. The driver didn't look at me. I walked closer. The house looked good. Better than I remembered. New paint, new shutters, the porch had been rebuilt. The lawn was trim. There were flower beds along the walk that hadn't been there before. I climbed the porch steps and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. The door opened. A woman stood there, mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back, yoga pants and a loose sweater. I didn't recognize her. She looked at me the way you look at a door-to-door salesman. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm looking for my son," I said. "This is his house." Her expression didn't change. "I'm sorry, who?" "My son. He lives here, with my mother." She glanced past me toward the street, like she was checking for witnesses. "I think you have the wrong address," she said. "I don't." "Sir, I don't know who you think lives here, but I used to live here," I said. "This was my mother's house. My son moved in 10 years ago." Her face hardened. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Where's my mother?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Her name is Dorothy. She's 86. She lived here her entire life." The woman stepped back and started to close the door. I put my hand on it. "Don't," she said. Her voice was sharp now. "Don't touch my door. Just tell me where they are. I'm calling the police." She shoved the door. I let it close. I stood there on the porch, breathing hard, staring at the wood grain. I walked back down the steps and looked at the memorial sign again. In loving memory. I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Then I walked around to the back of the house. The yard was fenced now. 6 feet of clean white vinyl. I followed it to the gate, tried the latch, locked. I could hear voices, a man laughing, the clatter of dishes. I grabbed the top of the fence and pulled myself up. The backyard had been completely redone. Stone patio, outdoor kitchen, a fire pit surrounded by Adirondack chairs. There was a pergola strung with lights, and there was my son. He was standing by the grill, spatula in hand, talking to a man I didn't recognize. He looked older, thicker around the middle. His hair was thinning on top. He wore a polo shirt and khaki shorts and expensive sunglasses. I dropped into the yard. Both men turned. My son stared at me. I stared back. "Hey," I said. He didn't move. The other man set down his drink. "Everything okay?" My son's mouth opened, closed. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. "It's me," I said. "It's Dad." He blinked. Then his face changed. The shock drained out, and something else took its place. He stepped forward. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I came to see you." "You can't just—" He looked toward the house. "You can't just show up like this." I knocked. She wouldn't let me in. "Who?" "The woman at the front door." He rubbed his face. "Jesus Christ." "I saw the sign," I said. He didn't respond. "There's a sign in the front yard, with my name on it. You need to leave. You need to leave right now." "Where's Mom?" His jaw tightened. "She's fine." "Where is she?" "She's safe. She's taken care of. I want to see her." "That's not possible." "Why not?" He took a step closer. His voice dropped. "Because you don't get to just come back. You don't get to walk in here after 10 years and start making demands." "I'm not making demands. I'm asking to see my mother." "You gave up that right." "I didn't give up anything." "You signed the papers." "You told me it was temporary." "It wasn't." The other man cleared his throat. "I'm gonna head inside." My son didn't look at him. "Good idea." The man walked past me, fast, not making eye contact. We stood there alone in the yard. "You told me you'd take care of her," I said. "I did." "Where is she?" "Somewhere better than where she was." "What does that mean?" He turned away, started gathering plates off the patio table. "It means she's in a place where she gets the care she needs. Professional care. It's expensive, but it's worth it." "What facility?" "I'm not telling you that." "Why not?" "Because you'll show up there and cause a scene just like you're doing here." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "I want to see her," I said again. He turned back to me. "No. She's my mother. And I have legal guardianship, which means I decide who sees her, and you're not on the list." I took a step forward. He held up the spatula like a weapon. "Stay back. You're keeping me from my own mother. I'm protecting her from someone who abandoned her. I didn't abandon anyone. You left. You disappeared. You didn't call, didn't write, didn't check in, for years. I called. I sent emails. Once or twice. You stopped responding. Because there was nothing to say." I looked at him. Really looked at him. Tried to find some trace of the kid I'd raised, the one who used to help me fix the truck, the one who'd sit on the porch and ask me about the stars. He was gone. "Who are you?" I asked. He flinched, just a little. Then his face hardened again. "I'm the one who stayed," he said. "I'm the one who took care of everything while you ran away. So don't come back here acting like you're owed something. You're not." He walked past me toward the house. "If I see you here again," he said over his shoulder, "I'm calling the police." The back door slammed. I stood there in the yard, alone, staring at the grill. Smoke was still rising from the burners. I turned and climbed back over the fence. I walked 4 blocks before I stopped shaking. I found a bench outside a grocery store and sat down. People walked past. Nobody looked at me. I was invisible, just like they wanted. I pulled out my phone and searched for memory care facilities in the county. There were 6. I saved the addresses. Then I searched my son's name. The results surprised me. He was all over the local news archives, charity events, fundraisers, community board meetings. There were photos of him shaking hands with the mayor, cutting ribbons, speaking at podiums. pillar of the community. I scrolled through the images. In every single one, he was smiling. I put the phone away and looked up at the sky. It was a beautiful day. Clear and blue. The kind of day that made you think everything was fine. I thought about the sign in the yard, in loving memory. I thought about my son's face when he saw me, that first moment of shock before he remembered to be angry. He'd looked terrified. I stood up and started walking again. I needed to find a place to stay, needed to figure out my next move. But first, I needed to see my mother. I reached the first care facility at noon. It was a low brick building with a circular drive and a sign that said, Sunrise Senior Living. The lobby smelled like vanilla air freshener and something medicinal underneath. A woman at the desk looked up when I walked in. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for my mother, Dorothy Brennan." She typed on her computer. "I'm sorry, we don't have anyone by that name." "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir." I tried the second facility. Same answer. The third was locked. I had to buzz to get in. A nurse answered through the intercom. "I'm looking for Dorothy Brennan," I said. Static. Then, "We can't give out resident information. I'm her son. You'll need to speak with administration." "Can I do that now?" "They're not here on Sundays." I stepped back from the intercom and looked up at the building. 3 stories, bars on some of the windows. I walked around to the back. There was a courtyard with benches and a few residents sitting in wheelchairs. An aide stood nearby, scrolling through her phone. None of them were my mother. I tried the 4th facility, and the 5th. Nothing. By the time I reached the 6th, it was almost 4 in the afternoon. My feet hurt, and I was running out of patience. This one was different, bigger, more expensive looking. The sign said, Meadowbrook Estates in gold letters. The lobby had a chandelier. A man in a suit sat behind the desk. He looked up and assessed me in one glance. I saw his judgment in real time. "I'm looking for Dorothy Brennan," I said. He didn't touch his computer. "Are you family?" "I'm her son." "Name?" "Frank Brennan." His expression changed, just slightly. "One moment," he said. He picked up a phone and turned away, speaking quietly. I waited. He hung up and turned back to me. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have anyone by that name." "You didn't check." "I don't need to." "Why not?" "Because if you were family, you'd already know she wasn't here." I stared at him. He stared back. "Have a good day, sir," he said. I didn't move. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I turned and walked out. I made it halfway across the parking lot before I stopped. Something he'd said stuck in my head. If you were family, you'd already know. I turned back to the building, looked at the windows, the manicured grounds, the expensive cars in the lot. This wasn't a care facility. It was a fortress, and my mother was inside. I walked back through town as the sun started to set. The streets filled with families, kids on bikes, couples walking dogs. Everyone looked happy. I passed my son's house again. The memorial sign was gone. Taken down in the last few hours. They knew I'd seen it. They knew I was back. I kept walking until I found a motel on the highway. $29 a night, weekly rates available. The clerk barely looked at me when I paid cash. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach. The TV didn't work. The bed was hard. I lay on it and stared at the ceiling. I thought about the last 10 years, all the places I'd been, all the jobs I'd worked. I'd told myself I was giving them space, giving everyone time to adjust. But the truth was simpler. I'd been erased, carefully, methodically. They'd taken my home, my family, my identity, and they'd done it so quietly that nobody even noticed. I thought about my son's face when he saw me in the yard, that moment of terror before the mask came back. He hadn't been scared of what I'd do. He'd been scared that I existed at all. I sat up and turned on the lamp. I pulled out my phone and started making a list. Things I knew. Things I needed to know. My mother was alive. She was probably at Meadowbrook. My son had legal control. He'd built a life on the foundation of my absence, and he'd memorialized me while I was still breathing. I thought about that sign. In loving memory. I set the phone down and looked at my reflection in the dark window. I looked old, tired, forgettable. Good. Let them think I was nothing. Let them think I'd crawl away. I stood up and opened the duffel bag. At the bottom, under the clothes, was a folder. Inside were copies of everything I'd signed 10 years ago. Power of attorney, guardianship papers, property transfer documents. I'd kept them all this time. I pulled them out and spread them on the bed. Then I started reading. Before we continue, hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We'd love to get to know our audience better. Monday morning, I walked into the county clerk's office at 9 sharp. The building was old but maintained. Marble floors, high ceilings, the smell of paper and wood polish. A woman at the information desk looked up from her computer. "I need to access property records," I said. "Third floor, room 312. They open at 9:30. I took the stairs. Room 312 was a small office with filing cabinets along one wall and a computer terminal at a desk. A man in his 50s sat there, reading a newspaper. He folded it when I walked in. "Help you?" "I need to look up a property, residential." "Address?" I gave him my mother's old address. He typed it into the computer, squinted at the screen. "What do you need to know?" "Who owns it?" "Ownership transferred 11 years ago. Current owner is Brennan Family Trust." "What's that?" "A trust, legal entity, probably set up for estate planning." "Who controls it?" He scrolled down. "Trustee is listed as Andrew Brennan, my son." "Is there a way to see the original transfer documents?" "You family?" "I'm Frank Brennan. That was my mother's house." He looked at me over his reading glasses, then back at the screen. "Original owner was Dorothy Brennan. Transfer executed 11 years ago. Looks like it was part of a guardianship arrangement." "Can I get copies?" "You can request them. Take 3 to 5 business days." "I need them now." "Can't do that?" "Why not?" "Because that's not how it works." I took out my wallet and set it on the desk. He didn't touch it. "I can put in a rush request," he said. 2 days, maybe. I wrote down my phone number on a piece of paper and handed it to him. "Call me when they're ready." He nodded. I left the clerk's office and walked to the county courthouse 2 blocks away. The building was newer, all glass and steel. I found the records department on the 2nd floor. A young woman with red hair sat behind a plexiglass window. "I need to look up guardianship records," I said. "Name?" "Dorothy Brennan," she typed. "Guardianship established 10 years ago. Guardian is Andrew Brennan, active status." "What does that mean?" "Means it's current, still in effect." "Can I see the file?" "Are you a party to the guardianship?" "I'm her son." "Are you listed on the guardianship documents?" "No." "Then I can't show you the file." "Why not?" "Privacy laws. Only the guardian or the court can access it." I leaned against the counter. "What if I wanted to challenge it?" "You'd need to file a petition with the court." "How do I do that?" "You'd need a lawyer." "What if I don't have one?" "Then you'd need to file pro se. I can give you the forms." "How long does it take?" "Depends on the case. Could be months." I stared at her. She stared back, sympathetic but unmoved. "Can you at least tell me if there have been any complaints filed? Any issues with the guardianship?" "I can't disclose that." I pushed back from the counter. "Thanks for nothing," I said. She didn't respond. I walked out of the courthouse and stood on the steps, looking at the street. A food truck was parked on the corner. People were lined up for lunch. Everyone looked normal, like the world made sense. I walked to the library. It was a Carnegie building, all stone and heavy doors. The inside was cool and quiet. I found a computer terminal in the back and sat down. I spent the next 2 hours searching. Andrew Brennan. My son. The results piled up. He'd been busy. 10 years ago, he'd started a consulting business, nonprofit management, fundraising, community outreach. He had a website with testimonials from local organizations. He sat on 3 boards. He'd won an award from the Chamber of Commerce. I found his LinkedIn, over 500 connections. I found his wife's Instagram, Kara. That was her name. The woman who'd answered the door. Her feed was perfect. Carefully curated shots of their house, their trips, their friends. She posted about wellness and gratitude and living authentically. In one photo, she and my son stood in front of Meadowbrook Estates, holding a giant check. The caption read, "Proud to support our local seniors. Every contribution makes a difference." I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I searched for my mother. Nothing. I searched for myself. One result, an obituary, from 8 years ago. Frank Joseph Brennan, 46, passed away peacefully after a brief illness. He is survived by his son Andrew and his mother Dorothy. A private service will be held. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to Meadowbrook Estates. I read it 3 times. Peaceful passing, brief illness, private service. I screenshotted the obituary and saved it to my phone. Then I cleared the browser history and walked out of the library. The sun was bright. I stood on the sidewalk and let it hit my face. A couple walked past holding hands. The woman glanced at me, then away. I looked like what I was, a man with no place to go. I walked back to the motel and sat on the bed. I thought about the documents I'd signed 10 years ago, the ones in my duffel bag. I pulled them out and read them again. Slower this time. The power of attorney was broad, gave my son control over my mother's finances, medical decisions, living arrangements. But there was something else. A clause I'd missed before. Incapacity. I read it again. They just needed me gone. And after 10 years of silence, I might as well have been. I set the papers down and lay back on the bed. I thought about my son at the grill, the way he'd held up that spatula like a weapon. He wasn't scared of me. He was scared of what I represented. Proof. Proof that he'd lied. I sat up and grabbed my phone. I pulled up the obituary again. Donations can be made to Meadowbrook Estates. I called the number listed on their website. A woman answered. Meadowbrook Estates. How may I help you? I'm calling about making a donation. Wonderful. Can I get your name? Frank Brennan. Silence. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Frank Brennan. I wanted to contribute to the Senior Care Fund. More silence. 1 moment, please. Hold music. I waited. A man's voice came on. This is Director Phillips. Who am I speaking with? Frank Brennan. And you're calling about a donation? That's right. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to have to ask you not to call here again. Why is that? Because we have clear instructions regarding your contact with this facility. From who? From the family of one of our residents. My family. Sir, I just want to see my mother. That's not possible. Why not? Because you've been flagged as a potential risk. A risk? Yes. To who? To the resident in question. I laughed. It came out harsh. You think I'm a threat to my own mother? I think you need to respect the guardian's wishes. The guardian is my son, and he has legal authority. Based on lies. Sir, if you continue to call, we'll have to involve law enforcement. Good. Do that. I'd love to tell them what's going on. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone. Then I threw it across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen intact. I took a breath. Then another. I picked up the phone and checked it. Still worked. I opened my contacts and scrolled through the 3 names saved there. Jerry, old co-worker from the freight company. Pauline, woman I'd dated for a few months in Arizona. Mom. I stared at that last one. The number probably didn't work anymore. Probably went to some stranger or an automated message. I called it anyway. It rang 4 times. Then someone picked up. Hello? Not my mother's voice. A younger woman. Tired sounding. Who is this? I asked. Who's calling? This used to be my mother's number. Oh, yeah, it's under the facility account now. I'm one of the aides. At Meadowbrook? Yeah. My heart kicked. Is Dorothy Brennan there? Pause. I can't give out resident information. I'm her son. You'll need to speak with administration. I tried that. They won't let me see her. I'm sorry, I really can't. Just tell me if she's okay. Another pause. Longer this time. She's fine, the woman said quietly. Is she being treated well? I can't talk about this. Please. I heard background noise, voices, a door closing. She's fine, the woman repeated. I have to go. I sat there holding the phone. She's fine, said twice, which meant she probably wasn't. I stood up and paced the small room. I needed to think. They'd locked me out completely. Legal guardianship, facility restrictions, social narrative. They'd built a wall around my mother and put my son on top of it. And everyone believed him. Community leader, devoted son, model citizen. I stopped pacing. That was it. That was the problem. I was trying to fight them as myself, as Frank Brennan. But Frank Brennan didn't exist anymore. I pulled out my wallet and looked at my driver's license. Current address in Nevada, issued 3 years ago. I looked at the obituary on my phone. Then I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked different than I had 10 years ago. Grayer, thinner, harder around the eyes. Nobody in this town really remembered me. I'd been gone too long. And the people who might remember were seeing what they'd been told to see. Or a crazy homeless man. I splashed water on my face and dried it with the rough motel towel. Then I opened my duffel bag and pulled out everything I owned. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, a jacket, toiletries, the folder of documents, and at the very bottom, wrapped in a t-shirt, my old work ID from the freight company. I looked at the photo. Younger, cleaner, smiling. That version of me could get into places, could talk to people, could ask questions without raising alarms. I set the ID on the sink. Then I pulled out my phone and made a list. Things I needed. New clothes, something that didn't scream motel transient, a haircut, a plan. I checked my bank account. $1,400. Enough. I grabbed my jacket and walked out into the late afternoon sun. There was a Goodwill 3 blocks away. I bought 2 button-down shirts, a pair of slacks, and a belt. $9 total. Next door was a barber shop. Walk-ins welcome. The barber was an old man with shaky hands. He didn't ask questions. I told him to take it all down to a 1/4 inch. You sure? He said. Yeah. He started cutting. I watched my hair fall in clumps around the chair. When he was done, I looked like someone else. Sharper, cleaner. That'll be 12, he said. I paid him and walked out. Next stop was a thrift store. I found a leather portfolio case for $3 and a pair of reading glasses for $2. I didn't need the glasses, but they helped with the look. I went back to the motel and changed into the new clothes. I looked at myself in the mirror. Business casual, respectable, the kind of person you'd let into a building without asking too many questions. I practiced my expression. Relaxed, professional, nothing to hide. Then I grabbed the portfolio case and put the folder of documents inside. I walked out into the evening air. Tomorrow I'd start over, as someone new, someone they wouldn't see coming. Monday morning I walked into the legal aid office at 9 sharp. The waiting room was crowded, people sitting in plastic chairs, filling out forms, looking tired. I signed in at the desk. What's this regarding? The receptionist asked. Guardianship challenge. She handed me a clipboard. Fill this out. Someone will call you. I sat and filled out the intake form. Name, address, income, problem description. I kept it brief. challenging guardianship based on financial exploitation and improper care. I returned the clipboard, sat back down, waited. An hour passed, then another. Finally, a woman called my name. "Frank Brennan?" I stood. She led me to a small office, introduced herself as Maria Chen, staff attorney. We sat. "Tell me about your situation," she said. I did. Everything. The guardianship, the trust, the nonprofit, the locked room, my son's control. She took notes. When I finished, she set down her pen. "This is complicated," she said. "I know. Challenging a guardianship is difficult even in clear-cut cases. When there's family conflict, it's harder. But it's possible. It's possible, but you need evidence. Strong evidence. I have documents. That's a start. But you also need testimony, medical evaluations, proof of harm. How do I get that? You'd need to file a petition with the court, request an investigation. The court would appoint an independent evaluator to assess your mother's condition and the guardianship arrangement. How long does that take? Months, maybe longer. I leaned back. I don't have months. I understand, but the legal process takes time. What if she's in immediate danger? Is she? She's locked in a room. She's isolated. She's being financially exploited. Those are serious allegations, but unless there's evidence of imminent physical harm, the court won't expedite the process. I stared at her. She looked sympathetic but firm. "I want to help," she said, "but I need you to understand what you're up against. Your son has legal authority. He has documentation. He probably has lawyers. And I have the truth. Truth isn't always enough." I stood up. "So, what do I do?" "File the petition. Gather evidence. Be patient." "That's it?" "That's the legal way." I walked out, stood on the sidewalk, felt the walls closing in. Legal way. The system. The same system that had let this happen in the first place. I walked to the courthouse, found the clerk's office, asked for guardianship petition forms. The woman handed me a packet. "You filing pro se?" "Yes." "You'll need to complete all sections. File with the court. Pay the fee." "How much?" $200. I took the forms and left. Went back to the motel. Spread the forms out on the bed. Started filling them out. Name of petitioner, Frank Brennan. Name of ward, Dorothy Brennan. Current guardian, Andrew Brennan. Grounds for challenge, financial exploitation, improper care, isolation. I worked through each section carefully. It took 3 hours. When I finished, I read through it twice. Then I put it in an envelope. Tomorrow I'd file it, and then I'd wait. Again. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. Needed to move, needed to think about something else. I walked downtown, past the newspaper office, thought about calling Reeves, decided against it. If he had something, he'd call. I kept walking, past the Chamber of Commerce. Wondered if they'd reviewed the documents yet. Wondered if they cared. Probably not. They'd protect their own. I walked past the library, past the park, past the elementary school. Found myself at my mother's house again. The lights were on inside. I could see movement through the windows. Kara walked past holding a phone to her ear. She was laughing. I stood there watching. She had no idea I was outside, no idea I was watching, no idea what was coming. I turned away and kept walking. Found myself at the cemetery, old cemetery on the edge of town. I walked through the gates and looked at the headstones, names and dates, people who'd lived and died in this town. I found the Brennan family plot. My grandparents were buried here, my father. I stood in front of their stones, read the names, thought about family, about legacy, about what it meant to belong somewhere. Then I noticed something. There was a space next to my father's grave, a blank plot, reserved. I looked closer, saw a small metal marker in the ground, reserved for Frank Joseph Brennan. My son had bought me a grave. I stared at it, Then I laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and bitter. He'd really done it, even bought the plot, planning ahead. I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Evidence. Then I walked away, left the cemetery, and I wasn't going away. I walked back to the motel as the sun set. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. You need to stop. This is your last warning, I replied. Or what? No response. I turned off the phone, lay down on the bed. Tomorrow I'd file the petition, start the legal process. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. The system moved too slow, and my son had too much control. I needed something bigger, something that would force immediate action. I thought about the media, about Reeves at the newspaper. If he ran the story, it would create pressure. Public pressure. The kind my son couldn't ignore. But he needed more evidence, more sources. I needed to give him that. I thought about Lisa, about Patricia the ombudsman, about the investigations happening in the background. I needed them to move faster. I needed to push. I sat up and turned the phone back on. Called Patricia. Hollis, it's Frank Brennan. I was going to call you tomorrow. Why? I visited Meadowbrook today, spoke with staff. And? I have concerns. What kind of concerns? I can't discuss details of an active investigation, but I'm moving forward with a full review. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe a month. That's too long. It's the process. What about immediate intervention? Can you do that? Only if there's imminent danger. There is. Based on what I saw today, your mother is safe. She's clean, fed, medicated. The facility is compliant with regulations. She's locked in a room. That's standard for memory care residents who wander. She doesn't wander. According to her medical records, she does. I closed my eyes. Those records are fake. I need proof of that. How do I get proof? An independent medical evaluation, which requires a court order, which requires a petition. I'm filing one tomorrow. Good. I'll continue my investigation. We'll coordinate findings. Thank you. I hung up, felt the frustration building. Every path led back to waiting, to process, to bureaucracy. While my mother stayed locked up, I paced the room, thought about my options. Legal channels were too slow. Breaking in was too risky. The media needed more evidence. What else? I thought about my son, about his perfect life, his perfect reputation. What would crack it? What would make him slip? I thought about the threats, the warnings, the police visit. He was nervous. Good. Nervous people made mistakes. I needed to make him more nervous. I pulled out my laptop, started composing an email, addressed it to every board member of every organization my son was involved with, copied his business contacts from LinkedIn. For the past 10 years, my son, Andrew Brennan, has been engaged in systematic financial exploitation of my elderly mother. He has used her assets to fund a nonprofit that exists only to pay his salary. He has isolated her in a care facility where she is locked in a room against her will. I have documentation of all of this. I have filed complaints with the state ombudsman. I am filing a guardianship challenge with the court. I wanted you to know who you're working with. The truth will come out. And when it does, you may want to distance yourselves. I attached copies of the key documents. Read through it one more time. Then moved my cursor over the send button. Hesitated. This was nuclear. Once I sent this, there was no going back. My son would retaliate. He'd call the police again. He'd file for a restraining order. He'd do whatever it took to shut me down. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I needed him to retaliate, to escalate, to show everyone who he really was. I clicked send. The email went out to 37 people. I closed the laptop, turned off the phone, went to bed. Tomorrow everything would change. Tuesday morning started quiet. Too quiet. I woke up at 6 and checked my phone. 15 missed calls, 23 text messages. I scrolled through them. Half were from unknown numbers, probably my son. The other half were from people I didn't know, board members, business associates, people who'd received the email. Most were confused, a few were angry. One said, "If this is true, you need to get a lawyer. If it's not, you're going to get sued." I didn't respond to any of them. I got dressed and walked to the courthouse, filed the guardianship petition, paid the $200 fee. The clerk stamped it and gave me a copy. "You'll receive notice of a hearing date within 30 days, she said. 30 days? That's standard. I took the copy and left. 30 days. My son would have 30 days to prepare, 30 days to lock everything down tighter, 30 days to destroy evidence. I walked outside and stood on the courthouse steps. The sun was bright. The air was cool. People walked past, going about their normal lives. I checked my phone. 5 new voicemails. I listened to the first one. "Mr. Brennan, this is Janet Morris from the Chamber of Commerce. We received your email and frankly we're appalled. Making wild accusations without proof is defamatory and we won't tolerate it. We're forwarding this to our legal counsel." Delete. Second voicemail. "Dad, it's Andrew. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop. You're embarrassing yourself and hurting people. Call me." Delete. Third voicemail. "Mr. Brennan, this is Dan Reeves from the paper. Got your mass email. Can't say that was the smartest move, but it's definitely news now. Call me back." I saved that one. Fourth voicemail. "Frank Brennan, this is Detective Morrison with the police department. We need to speak with you regarding a harassment complaint. Please call me at this number." Delete. Fifth voicemail. "Mr. Brennan, this is Patricia Hollis. I heard about your email. That was not the right approach. We need to talk about coordinating our efforts. Please call me." I turned off the phone, put it in my pocket, started walking. I'd lit the fuse. Now I just had to see what exploded. I walked to the coffee shop across from Meadowbrook, ordered coffee, and sat by the window, waited. At 10:30, a police car pulled up to the facility. 2 officers got out, went inside, stayed for 20 minutes, came back out, drove away. Something was happening. I watched the building. At 11, a black sedan pulled up. A man in a suit got out. Lawyer, probably. He went inside. I sipped my coffee. Waited. At noon, my phone buzzed. I turned it on. Text from Reeves. "You started a shitstorm. Call me." I called him. "What the hell were you thinking?" he said. "I was thinking people needed to know the truth. You can't just blast accusations to half the town and expect it to go well. I have documentation. I know. I saw it. And I'm working on verifying it. But you just made my job harder." "How?" "Because now everyone's lawyered up. Now it looks like a personal vendetta instead of a legitimate story. It is legitimate. I believe you. But now I have to prove it under a microscope, with lawyers watching every word. So what do I do? Stop sending emails, stop making accusations, and let me do my job. How long will that take? As long as it takes. That's not good enough. It's going to have to be." He hung up. I set the phone down, looked back at Meadowbrook. The lawyer's car was still there. I finished my coffee and left, walked back to the motel. My phone rang. "Patricia Hollis." I answered. "You need to stop," she said. "So I've been told. I'm serious. What you did today undermined my investigation." "How?" "Because now the facility is on high alert. They've hired legal counsel. They're documenting everything, which means getting honest information just became 10 times harder. Maybe that's good. Maybe it means they're worried. Or maybe it means they're covering their tracks." I didn't respond. "Listen," she said. "I understand you're frustrated, but you can't go rogue. You need to work with the system. The system isn't working. It takes time. I don't have time. Then you're going to lose, because that's how it works." She hung up. I turned off the phone again, sat on the bed. Everyone was telling me to stop, to wait, to be patient, while my mother sat in that room, alone, confused. I stood up and looked in the mirror. I looked tired. but I wasn't stopping. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. I walked to my son's house, stood across the street. His car was in the driveway. I walked up to the front door, knocked, waited. The door opened. Kara stood there. She stared at me. "You need to leave," she said. "I want to talk to Andrew." "He doesn't want to talk to you." "Too bad." She started to close the door. I put my foot in the way. "Move your foot," she said. "Get Andrew." "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." She pulled out her phone. I heard footsteps behind her. My son appeared. He looked at me. His face was tight, controlled, but his eyes were angry. "Get out of here," he said. "Not until we talk." "There's nothing to talk about." "There's everything to talk about." Kara was on the phone, speaking quietly. My son stepped forward, closer to the door. "You need to leave, now." "Let me see Mom." "No." "Why are you doing this?" "Because you abandoned us. You left. You gave up your rights." "You lied to me." "I protected her." "You imprisoned her." "I gave her the care she needed." "You locked her in a room and stole her money." "I managed her affairs, legally." "Illegally." He smiled, cold and sharp. "Prove it." "I will." "No, you won't, because there's nothing to prove. Everything I did was authorized, documented, legal." "We'll see what the court says." "The court will side with me. I have medical records, expert testimony, 10 years of clean guardianship. You have paranoia and a grudge. I have evidence. You have copies of public documents. That's not evidence. That's Google." Behind him, Kara said, "They're on their way." My son stepped back. "You have 2 minutes to leave before the cops get here. And when they do, I'm pressing charges, harassment, trespassing, maybe stalking, whatever sticks." "You can't silence me." "I don't need to. You're doing it yourself. Every email you send, every scene you make, you look crazier and crazier. People already think you're unhinged. I'm just letting them see it." I stared at him. He stared back. "Goodbye, Dad," he said. He closed the door. I heard the lock click. I stood there for a moment. Then I heard the sirens. I walked away. Fast. Cut through a yard. Down an alley. Kept moving. The sirens got closer. I reached a busy street. Blended into foot traffic. Walked 3 blocks. Found a bus stop. Sat down. Caught my breath. My phone buzzed. I turned it on. Text from unknown number. "Next time you show up at my house, I'll have you arrested." I deleted it. Turned the phone off. Sat there watching cars go by. My son was right about one thing. I was making this personal, making it look like a vendetta, which undermined everything. I needed to pull back, needed to let the investigations play out, needed to be smart. But every instinct screamed at me to keep pushing, to force the issue, to break down that door and take my mother out of there myself. I closed my eyes, took a breath, then another. I had to be patient, had to trust the process, even though the process had failed before, even though the process was designed to protect people like my son, people with lawyers and documentation and clean records, not people like me, people with nothing. I opened my eyes, watched the traffic, made a decision. I couldn't fight this legally. I'd tried, and every attempt just made things worse. So I'd stop trying to fight it legally. I'd fight it differently, quietly, carefully. I'd stop sending emails, stop making scenes, stop giving them ammunition. Instead, I'd watch and wait. And when they made a mistake, and they would make a mistake, I'd be ready. I stood up and walked back to the motel. I had work to do.